5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's Monday night, November 4th, 2024. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 6 p.m. on the West Coast, 8 a.m. in Singapore, 12 noon in Sydney, Australia, and here where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis, it's 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time. No, it's not Daylight Time anymore. What am I talking about? It's Central Standard Time. We did that yesterday. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 173, and we have an unusual and special show for you tonight. So, we're not taking any calls this evening, and we're not taking any text messages. I'm going to yak for about an hour because I have a lot to say. And so, first of all, I want to point out that this might be the last time I do a solo show in a long time. We are transitioning this program over to an interview show rather than a general potpourri type thing we've been doing for the last 15, 16 months, where it was a 3-part show. I did a monologue, we did an interview, then we did a part 3 thing, and now it's a 2-part show. We're skipping the monologue, and the part 3 thing is going to be, whatever. But it's going to be mostly an interview show now. So this is the last time I'm going to do this in quite a while. But I wanted to do this because we've been talking about the election here. Well, if I go back to Conk News, my time at Conk News, for 4 years now. And I thought, what are we going to do for the election? And I hummed it over and hummed. I've been thinking about this for almost a year. And I finally came to the conclusion that on election night, tomorrow night, we're doing nothing. we're taking the night off because we really can't do it. I decided we can't do it any better than a zillion other places are doing it. And so I can't give you any reason to tune in here live. So the hell with it. We're just going to put it off. We're not doing a show tomorrow night. That's Tuesday night, election night. Wednesday night, Jeff MEYER from Conk News, my former boss, publisher there, is coming on. We're going to talk about what happened. Thursday night, we're taking off too. Next Monday, that's the 11th, a week from today, Susie Moore, the deputy editor of redstate.com is going to be our guest, and then we're off to the races after that. So that's what's going on here. Now, I'll cut to the chase. So the show's called Election Eve Predictions, and I'm going to predict what's going to happen. And the reason I kind of got into this whole game in the first place is because I seem to have, I'm far from flawless. Don't get me wrong. I'm wrong all the time, but I seem to have a relatively good idea of what's called the zeitgeist, or what people are thinking, and because of that, I've been relatively good at predicting elections. Like I said, I'm wrong, but I'm right more often than not. And that's the reason that's one of the reasons I got into this game in the first place. So I'm going to give you some facts here, some figures to back up my thinking. I'm not actually backing up my thinking. I'm getting my opinion and my conclusions from the figures and statistics. But the problem is the figures you've been reading about, a lot of them are wrong. And I'm going to get to that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So first of all, there's only 4 real pollsters that have been accurate consistently in the last 10 years. You talk about the real Clear Politics average, which is like 39 different polls. It's average, all that sounds great, Well, most of them are crap. That's the problem. That's the first problem right there. Nate Silver was on a podcast this weekend, I think on Saturday. And I'm going to cut to what he says. First of all, he's one of the 4 most accurate pollsters. They are Rasmussen, Trafalgar, Atlas, and Nate Silver, or 538, or whatever you want to call it. I don't think, if I'm right, I don't think Nate's actually working for 538 anymore. I think he works on his own. I think 538 is not, he sold it or something. But at any rate, those are the 4 major pollsters. Now, Nate went on a podcast on Saturday, I think it was, and he said, and rightly so, and he said that the reason most of these polls are crap, especially the public polls, he said that the internal polling that the campaigns do is much, much more accurate. Of course, that never gets public. Basically, it doesn't. It leaks out, apparently. But the reason the public polls are so bad is because, especially this election, it's not even that they're politically partisan. They have a vested interest in keeping the election close because they will ultimately make more money from that, from future clients. Because the thing is, if they're wrong, they can say, we weren't wrong by much, So if you've been following this, and I'm sure you have over the last 2-3 months, this election has been within 2 points of each of these candidates of each other, like forever and everywhere. The last poll done of the 7 battleground states this weekend, so they were all within like 2 points of each other, all of them. And Nate says that's BS. And the reason he said, like I said, he says it's because these polling companies actually profit from keeping this election close. He said, now this is Saturday, he's revised his opinion a little bit. He said it's not even close. It's going to be 55-45 Trump. And when I say revised, this morning he came out and said, well, he's revising it a little more. He says it's 52-47, 52-48 Trump. And the reason is, and this is where I like my spidey sense comes in, and I know he's right about this. And those of you who are Trump fans may not want to hear this, but over the weekend, basically the 3 weeks of momentum that Trump had built up has basically died. Now, the good news, if you're a Trump fan, is that they don't have enough. It's like 2 days. They don't have enough time to do anything with that. But the Trump euphoria has kind of gone down a little bit, and I sense the same thing. I noticed this also. I can't tell you how I notice this crap. I think I read an enormous amount of stuff every day. I mean, hours to prepare for this show, and it's just I don't know. It's like I was listening to Jimmy Fallon's radio show from Fox Radio, and he says the same thing. And I know he's a performer. If you've been in front of audiences, you kind of get a feel for this. You can kind of sense what the public is thinking, and it's very hard to explain. And like I said, I'm not always right. I'm not. But anyway, I thought the same thing that Silver said this morning, and that is, yes, Trump's 3 weeks of momentum is basically gone now. But like I said, also, there's not enough time for the Harris campaign to do anything about that. So basically, we're stuck where we're at. And where we're at, I'll just cut to the chase right now. It's almost certain that Trump is going to win. He has a 93% chance. That was a Rasmussen that gave him that, of winning. And it's also the way the electoral votes are distributed. It's not even he still might not win the popular vote, although I think he will. That might be pretty close, but I think he will. And that's a prediction I'm not really that certain about. But the electoral count, Mark Halperin, who's easily one of the most non-biased and best real journalists working today, and he's on his own now since MSNBC cut him loose. He runs a outfit called Two-Way TV, which is at tway.tv. That's the numeral 2 WAY.tv, and that's his thing right now. And he says that what does he say, Jim? Well, at any rate, he said that the goddamn man, I need to have my head examined. Jesus, what was I talking about? I was talking about he's given Trump a 93% chance of winning, and not only that, what he said is that she basically has to run the table absolutely perfectly to even put together. It takes 270 electoral votes to win, and if she runs the table perfectly, that's exactly what she'll get, 270. Now that means she would win, because once one party gets 270, the other can't. Well, you could tie, and I think that happened once, if I'm right, in American history, where they had an electoral college tie, I think. But anyway, she would have to do it perfectly, and the chances of that happening are almost zero, whereas Trump has a lot of ways to get there, a lot. And also, there's also the thing called, it's the sleepy Trump voter, and I still think this is a case. A lot of people are discounting that about the fact that Trump, there's people who won't tell the pollsters they're going to vote for Trump. I mean, he is consistently throughout this entire 8-10 years, he's consistently um, come out about 5 points ahead of what the pollsters said he was going to. And so if he does that, it's going to be kind of a blowout. And the guy who runs Rasmussen polls, who was one of the four major polls I told you about that in terms of accuracy, he thinks it's going to be a blowout. He actually thinks that. He thinks, none of the other polling companies have said whether they've actually calculated that in now. And most of them apparently have not. But Trump has consistently polled about 5 points lower than he actually ends up getting for both the previous elections. So if a lot of people have compared this to 1980, and I keep talking about 1984. If you remember, that was Mondale and Reagan. You probably don't remember. I'm old as the hills. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about. So Walter Mondale from Minnesota, the current vice president the previous vice president, ran against Reagan for the presidency, and Mondale won only his home state, Minnesota, where I'm sitting. That's it. So it was like what? It was something like 413 votes to 10. I mean, it was ridiculous. But what people don't remember is that the 1980 election, when Reagan ran against Carter, now, Carter's presidency was basically a disaster. It was kind of like Biden's has been. And what people don't remember is that the pollsters had that close the entire time. And at the end of the day, Carter only won 48 electoral votes and Reagan took the rest. It wasn't even close. I can't even remember what I know that Reagan won the popular vote too, but I don't remember by how much. But anyways, the major polls for Rasmussen says he thinks the same thing's going to happen. So I am predicting that Trump is going to win. And like I said, I'm not sure on the actual popular vote, but it would be very difficult for this point for him to lose the electoral contest. It would very difficult. So to make up for this, now of course the Harris campaign won't talk about this. They're talking about the fact that they're on to victory. She decided today in the last 24 hours before the election, she decided to change her strategy, and for the first time ever, apparently this is like the first time ever since she got into the race. What was it, 3 months ago? For the first time ever, she did not mention Donald Trump by name at any of the rallies. She did talk about her quote unquote her opponent and how evil he is, but she did not mention her name. She's decided she's going to be a unifier. Rah, gays for Gaza, yeah, right, sure. Tell me all about it. So she's doing that. And it's also you have to this is really worth noting here. The Harris campaign has spent on this 3-month campaign $2.1 billion. Now I'm not talking about that's the whole election, not everybody, just her campaign. They spent $2.1 billion. They spent more than twice of what Trump has spent. And the really weird thing is, and this has not been confirmed, so I don't know if this is true, it almost appears that they've run out of money, because I read that in the last few days of last week, in less than a week now, they've been buying ad time on television stations across the country. But usually you buy that time in a 1-week block. So they would have bought like last Tuesday, they would have bought for the entire week, right? For Tuesday to Tuesday, right? Well, they stopped doing that. They were paying for these ads 1 day at a time. And that's very unusual. And the only reason you do that is if you didn't have any cash flow. That's the reason you do it. So, but of course, if you follow politics at all, you know that the amount of money spent on a campaign is and this is a really weird thing. People always talk about the money in politics, Well, it's kind of odd because every study done in the last 50 years have confirmed there's no correlation between the amount of money spent on a campaign and who wins. No, none at all. None. So and then it's, well, we need money. We need money. Well, I don't know. Maybe your candidate sucks. Maybe there's that, and here's my opinion here. I'm going to tell you, I think that Kamala Harris is probably the worst um, major party candidate in the last 100 years. I mean, this is terrible. Now today, and this, I just think this is brilliant. And I have to say, and I'm not alone on this. Even there are a lot of Democratic strategists, whoever those experts are, those goofy experts have said this. The Trump campaign, I suppose it's his third time doing this, so he probably, third time's a charm, has just been masterful in their execution. And today they put out one last ad, and it's unfortunate. I thought about showing it on the video here, but what the heck? Because it would not. If you're on the audio, you would not know what's going on. I don't want to do that. People bitch about Colin Cowherd, on the Herd on ESPN, and his problem is, and he's right. They're right. That show has basically become a TV show, but it runs on the radio. But half the time you have to watch it to actually figure out what's going on. And I don't want to go there. At any rate, this ad, and you can find it. It's on X. I found it on either Red State or Hot Air, one or the other. Basically my two favorite sites on the internet. I mean, I have people, like I said, Susie Moore from Red State's coming on Monday. She's the second person we've had on here. I've had three people regularly from Hot Air on here. Jazz Shaw, bless his heart, rest in peace, my friend. He passed away a few days ago. And I'll talk about that at the end of the show too. But at any rate, so you can find it there. And so what this ad is, they're trying to demonstrate Kamala's inauthenticity. And so it's three videos taken from three different of her rallies, three separate rallies. The camera angle is the same, straight onto the podium, and they played all three of them simultaneously in real time. And it is just creepy. It's 30 seconds long. It's just creepy how not only does the video match up, but the audio matches up too. In other words, this part of her stump speech is not only identical three times in a row, but it's timed exactly the same. And even her hand gestures and her head movements are identical. It's absolutely mind-boggling. I can't even, it's like it's like she was like she's a puppet. It's like she's a robot. It's just mind-boggling. Now to give her credit, and I can't give her a lot of credit here because this is just really creepy Halloween crap. Most politicians have a stump speech during a campaign that they give. They pretty much give it the same one. It's the same speech they give at every stop, but most of them alter it. I mean, I think Trump reads it from a teleprompter, but as far as I can tell, someone alters the speech a little bit every time. So he has people working for him, and they're doing that. And also, he is known to completely bull off the teleprompter and start to improvise. I mean, half of the speech is him just improvising. So it's never the same, never even close to the same. But still, he has roughly the same speech in the teleprompter. And most politicians do this. But Kamala's thing, she has exactly the same. She uses exactly the same speech every time, and she delivers it exactly the same way. And it's mind-boggling. I watched this. I couldn't even believe it. It's like, really, seriously? Jesus Christ. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling. So anyway, yeah, she's spending over twice as much money as Trump, but Trump has spent his money much more effectively. And like I said, it appears as there's some indication that she's run out of that money. Here's another case in point on that. Beyonce talked at a rally. Was it Thursday or Friday? Was it Houston? I can't even remember where it was. Well, Beyonce spoke for 3 minutes and didn't sing, and the crowd showed up. 30,000 people in this arena. They filled it. They did fill it. That was legitimate. They actually filled it. But it's plainly obvious they didn't come to see Kamala. They came to see Beyonce because they thought Beyonce was going to sing. And it turned out that the crowd realized that Beyonce wasn't going to sing. They turned on Kamala. They booed during her entire speech. But here's the kicker on this. Here's the part you don't know. Beyonce talked for 3 minutes, and for that 3 minutes, they paid her $11 million to show up to talk for not to sing, to show up to talk for 3 minutes. They paid her $11 million. And what I understand is that these celebrities that have been coming to her rallies, they're paying them similar amounts of money, mind-boggling amounts of money for just a few minutes of their time. So, that'll get rid of your $2 billion bucks really quick, and say, I mean, now seriously, you're looking, all right, Beyonce is insanely rich, but wouldn't she do it? She'd probably do it for $3 million bucks. It's 3 minutes. She'd probably do it for $3 million bucks, So, but they paid her 11. And then you wonder, and this has been the rumor the entire time, is that the vast majority of these celebrities are only doing it for the money, for the cash. They don't actually want to do it. I mean, we were talking about, who was I talking about this last week with Mark Tapscott? We were talking about the fact that almost all the surrogates that Kamala is getting to speak on her behalf seems to be kind of subtly stabbing her in the back. Bill Clinton said, well, the economy was better under Trump, but that doesn't mean you should vote for him. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, fine. Barack Obama said, you brothers, and excuse me. And the funny part about that is he says brothers the same way I say brothers. I'm a stupid white dude from the Midwest, I'm not even going to try. I'm not even trying to try the accent. I'm not going to try it. But he says it the same way, And then of course he gets in his private jet and goes back to Martha's house in Martha's Vineyard, So, he says, you brothers better vote for Kamala. I understand that you don't like that, it's just I don't know. It's just so mind-boggling. And then, of course, the king of this, it appears to be Joe Biden, who this last weekend called all the Trump supporters garbage, And then what did he do? Oh, hold just a second. I got this written down somewhere. What did he do this on Sunday? Well, they've told him, apparently, oh yeah, Joe said. So I don't know if you saw this, and I can't remember what campaign stop. And the other thing is, we're talking about quote unquote campaign stops. Now Harris is drawing. She's not drawing anywhere near as many people as Trump is, but she is drawing. So I got to get credit for that. I mean, my complaint about Biden and my evidence for the fact that the 2020 election was rigged and cheated was the fact that nobody showed up to see Joe Biden the entire time. I'm going to repeat this again. I've talked about this many times, that other than one rally in Pennsylvania 5 days before the 2020 election where Joe drew 900 people, Joe didn't draw more than 200 people to any campaign event and their excuse is, of course, is COVID. And that's bullshit because meanwhile, Trump was averaging 20,000 people. And even you go back to 2016, Hillary Clinton was averaging 1,500 people at her campaign events. Now that's not 20,000, but it's not 200. I mean, at least you can, you can scan the crowd and there's a few people there, now, and Kamala has apparently been drawing a few people. Now that said though, it's well known, they've been busing people to her campaign events. They bus people in. So it's not, the crowds aren't legitimate. She apparently drew 50,000 people when she talked on the mall, which no one remembers because Joe Biden called everybody garbage. I mean, the timing could not be worse. And when Mark Tapscott and I were talking last week, and I'm thinking, and he's saying, this is deliberate. This could not be. I mean, I know Joe's incompetent. I know that, but you could not time this any more perfectly if you were trying to do it deliberately. So there's that, and this was about 2 weeks ago where Kamala's given some rally somewhere. She's given some, I think it was an important economic speech. And at the very moment that speech was going to start, for the first time in his presidency, Joe walks into the press room at the White House and says he's going to take questions. I mean, he's never done it before, ever. And it was completely unexpected. He just walked in and said, yeah, you guys want to talk to me? And I was like, oh, Jesus. Now, this cannot be coincidental. I just don't think it is. I think he's, when I told Mark, and so I'm going to tell you if you didn't hear that show, I've had a lot of people in my family with dementia. I've dealt with that quite a lot. Now, dementia is a very interesting thing, and Joe seems to be sliding into it, but he's not there yet. And that's the point. People with dementia have good days and bad days. You really have dementia when the bad days overtake the good days. But until that, you're in quote unquote cognitive decline, and that's where Joe is right now. He doesn't have dementia, full blown dementia yet. He doesn't. He's in quote unquote cognitive decline. So he has more good days than bad days, and I think he has enough brain cells left in his little noggin that I'm going to screw this little bitch. I think that's what he thinks. I really do. He's a very, very angry man, and in some ways he is right to be, because I still think this, and then of course this is completely hypothetical now, we'll never know. I do think if Joe had stayed in the race, he would have lost, but I do think I think he would have done better than Kamala Harris is going to do tomorrow. I truly did believe the fact that he was the best person the Democrats could put against Trump, even though he still wouldn't have won, which is kind of weird, but like I said, we'll never know, So yeah, anyway, so Joe says on Sunday he says he wants to smack Trump in the ass. And that's pretty much a quote. That's pretty much what he said. And supposedly the scuttle among the White House press corps is that they took Biden's cell phone away. So, but the thing is, he did that I'm going full circle here. He did that at a quote unquote rally where only about 100 people showed up. And this happened Joe's entire campaign in 2020, and even through his entire presidency. Nobody comes to see him. Nobody. I mean, he is averaging. I still remember he gave a speech at Ohio State University. 36 people showed up. He gave a speech. This you can find this buried in the New York Times, but it's lost to history, basically. He gave in October 2021, this is after the Afghanistan thing, he supposedly gave a speech at a factory in Lancaster, Louisiana, which I think is outside of New Orleans. And nobody showed up. Nobody. Not a single person showed up to hear him talk. Nobody. This guy has no support from anyone and never has. And even before he dropped out of the race, I mean, you can go back and look at the videotape if you want. I mean, I have. Before he dropped out of the race for just now, he was giving quote unquote talks or speeches or whatever to about 50 to 100 people at a time, because no one wants to come see him. That's the problem. So anyway, I guess this last weekend, the Harris campaign had enough. They told him to go sit down and shut up. And oh, by the way, hand your cell phone over. Oh my God. So, okay, if Trump is going to win, and like I said, it's highly likely he's going to. I mean, I am going to predict that he's going to win, at least the Electoral College. It does make you wonder. So Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have really stunk the place up absolutely royally. I mean, Bill O'Reilly said in confronting the presidents, and Jeff Meyer calling news calls Bill O'Reilly my boyfriend, but that's not really true. I'm a straight guy. That Joe Biden is the second worst president in American history. And that's exactly what I've said too. And for the same reason O'Reilly said it, is because the worst president in American history is James Buchanan, the guy who was president before Abraham Lincoln. Because James Buchanan basically, I can't say he caused the Civil War, but he didn't. He could have stopped it and he didn't. That's the thing. So, I mean, you got one guy who had the ability to stop this whole thing, hundreds of thousands of people, and he didn't do it. And so he will probably never be ensconced or dethroned as the worst president in American history, but Joe Biden is second. The only thing I can think of that Joe Biden hasn't screwed up in the last 3.5 years, and I say this with a caveat, but still, I'm trying to give credit where credit is due here, is the Ukraine war, which he hasn't screwed up yet. So, but the war's still going. I mean, it's starting to look like it's going to be one of those forever wars, and there's on in the Federalist today, Army colonel who wrote under a pseudonym. Apparently, the federal staff knows who he is, but that he didn't want to publish his name. So he's an Army colonel. He wrote about the fact that the American military personnel in the United States armed forces hate Biden's guts because they see him as basically another forever wars guy, along with Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, the old neocon conservative crowd that they were starting wars basically to make money off of them. And the rank and file people in the military are really, really sick of it. Now, along with that too, this is really scary. You should know that the other thing that's been reported is that people in the military have said as of yesterday or the day before they are not receiving their mail-in ballots. They're not receiving, and the military is saying, well, we ran out. Well, what kind of excuse is that? The other thing, excuse me, the other thing this guy in the Federalist, and you should go to the Federalist.com. Maggie, what's her name? Oh Jesus, I keep getting her and Miranda Devine confused. Anyway, she's the editor in chief there. The other thing he said is the current crop of generals. He said, basically described them as to use a medical term, vaginas. That they too seem to be either incompetent or incapable of winning wars. And so we got General Milley here, who's diversity, equity, inclusion, gays for Gaza, queers for Palestine, yay. Yeah, and so these people are useless, and that's exactly his point too. They're literally useless. So we have one war after another, and Tulsi Gabbard, bless her heart, and my God, if there would be a female president, it should be her. I mean, Christ Almighty. I mean, there's something, I don't know what it is. I was thinking about this today, and you're going to think I'm dreaming about women, and maybe I am. I don't know. This woman, she radiates a positivity and warmth that is just kind of indescribable. First of all, yeah, she's physically beautiful. She is. So, all right, fine. We'll just acknowledge that, but that's not the deal. That's not what's really going on there. It's like this woman, there's something about her that she just, and the thing is, I don't necessarily agree with her on all policy. I don't, like she wants universal basic income. And I don't know if that's a particularly good idea. Also, the other thing is, I've said this before, if you're going to do something like that, you don't do it as universal basic income. You do it as a negative income tax, and then people said, I had a guest on here and said, yeah, but what about people who don't pay income tax? Well, no, you account for that. It's like, that's just a relatively minor detail because, universal basic income would be the fact that you'd give every person, adult in America, like $1,000 a month, and it wouldn't matter if they needed the money or not. This is in some ways the problem with Social Security. You're giving a lot of money to a lot of people who actually don't need the money. Which is the reason I've always thought, and I realize it'd be kind of difficult to do this, but it should be true social insurance. Everybody pays in, but you only collect at the end whether you need it. That would save everybody a lot of money. But the thing about a universal income, basic income, is you end up paying like $1,000 a month to millionaires. But if you do negative income tax, people get paid money based on a formula, how much they needed it, and that would be based on how much tax they did or didn't pay. So that would also save a lot of money. And it was does Elon Musk need that $1,000 a month? No, he doesn't. So my point, at any rate, she, even though I don't agree with her, Tulsi Gabbard, with everything, I trust her judgment regarding like having her finger on the nuclear button. I just do. I say I would sleep well at night knowing she was the president of the United States, even though she might do stuff I don't necessarily agree with. Now I have a lot of my liberal friends who think I'm nuts about this. I think the same thing about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I do. I'm really glad he's part of the Trump campaign and will be part of the Trump White House, because I think the same thing about him. And his people have been trying to, especially with the vaccine issues, have been trying to basically put him in a square peg or round hole for ages. But the thing is, these issues are much more complex than you can explain on the CBS Evening News in 25 seconds. And that's even my problem with climate change. I'm basically what they call a climate change denier. And the reason I am is because they say, well, follow the science. Yeah, I did follow the science. Nothing's going on. The science says it's BS. And I've had a lot of scientists on the show who have said the same thing. Now granted, yeah, I seek them out because I think the alternative point of view needs to point out. But I swear to God, there's no science that supports this. There isn't. So, and the science that does is basically made up. So, but the problem with that is that's an extremely complex subject. So I have Patrick Moore on the show. Him and I talked for an hour. He could barely explain what's going on. Now if you want to read his book, it's called Something Catastrophes and Threats of Doom. And, we did that show in like September of last year, I think it was. So it's still the most watched show in this entire series. It still is. Thousands of people watched it because people listen to what he says, especially because he was a former one of the founders of Greenpeace, of all things. I mean, one of those liberal organizations you can get, and he quit. He quit after like 20 years for true reasons, he said, because it had become another money grubbing organization that completely forgot its mission, and also because he disagreed with them on climate change. And he's a trained climatologist. That's what his degrees are in. And he said, no, there's no evidence that this happened. No, and I want to be very clear. And this is the part where, like I said, you can't wrap it up in 25 seconds. Actually, global warming is happening. The planet is getting warmer, and the planet's been getting warmer for 300 years. But like he said, there's a smoking gun involved in that too. For the first half of those 300 years, there was no industrialization on the planet, and the planet warmed up anyway. And not only that, we're actually at a cold spell right now. People have said this. Relatively speaking, we're in an ice age. So maybe we need the climate, the planet to warm up a little bit. And on top of that, then there's the thing about carbon dioxide. Like, if you listen to the climate change dorks, they'll tell you it's a pollutant. No, it isn't. It's the opposite. We need it. As a matter of fact, more carbon dioxide is better. Anyway, you see, this is the thing. You got me started on this, or I got myself started. Sorry. It's a very, very complex subject. And what Robert F. Kennedy was talking about with the vaccines is a very, very complex subject. Here's another thing on the vaccines, I'll just tell you. So, I mean, you hear a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people that think the vaccines have actually killed people, that they've done serious harm. I have no direct evidence of that, but I do have direct evidence of this. The booster shots didn't work. And what's the evidence I have? The Cleveland Clinic did a study of 50,000 people and concluded that you were more likely to get COVID if you had a booster shot than if you didn't. Now, that's absurd. Why the hell did you get one? And I have to tell you, I didn't, even though I did get the two original, the shots for the original vaccine, because I thought, okay, this is fantastic. And also, here's another thing. I trusted Trump. I got to admit, I did. I trusted him. He basically rammed those vaccines through. It was Operation Warp Speed. And so in February 2021, or early February, I went to the clinic and I got my two. Well, they're not together, but I got the first vaccine shot, and then I went back a month later and got the second. I thought, well, I'm vaccinated. Wow, that's great. And then about a month after that, the press is saying, well, now you need a booster shot. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm 67 years old. I've never needed another shot. Well, I've never needed more than 2 shots in a year for any vaccine I've ever had ever. And I thought, this is really weird. And so I see my doctor, fantastic doctor. Matter of fact, I tried to make an appointment with her today. She's booked up 2 months in advance. It turns out everybody at the clinic sees her. Fantastic doctor. I don't know if I should name her. I probably should, but I don't know if she wants to be associated with the show. So I'm not going to. At any rate, so I just happen to have an appointment scheduled with her, and I'm saying, Laura, what's going on here? Why do I need this booster shot? And she says, to be honest to God, she said, well, Jim, I got to tell you, we've been wondering the same thing. And I thought, well, my doctor says that? Okay, fine. Although I'm not getting one. Yeah, and it turns out, yeah, they were useless. I can't say can't sit here and tell you they were harmful. And a lot of people will tell you that, and maybe they were. But I won't tell you that, but I will tell you they were useless. They were useless. So, who profited from this? What? Pfizer? This is it's a very, very complex subject, and people try to wrap Robert F. Kennedy in ideas around it in 20 seconds. Well, you can't. And this is one of the problems with politics in America in general, is that we are trying to overly simplify highly complex issues. We are. But the problem is and I'm not saying you listening here, I'm talking about the American public in general, doesn't have time to address all this stuff. And they don't. And why should you? You know? And that brings me to a piece that David Strom, my friend over at Hot Air, the associate editor, wrote today. And it's about Peanut the squirrel. And I'm sure you've heard about this. You know something? I tell you what, let's take a commercial break here, and I'll talk about this when we get back. Here's a word from Conk News. Here we go. Hi all, I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. We're back. I'm Jim Peters. You're listening and watching Jim Peters Tonight. My last solo show for quite a while, I think. Okay, so I was talking about our friend David Strom here. He's the associate editor of hotair.com, and he comes on regularly. Matter of fact, he lives in Minneapolis. So him and we share a lot of scuttle. But he wrote a piece. Actually, he wrote a tweet on the X Twitter machine about Peanut the squirrel, and you've probably heard about this now. So Peanut the squirrel was the mascot, and I can't remember the name of the organization of a animal rescue nonprofit it's in New York, if I think upstate New York. So this organization has rescued thousands of cats and dogs and other animals too, and also squirrel. So Peanut was their mascot, and Peanut was the personal pet of the CEO and owner. Well, their home got raided. Was it Friday, Saturday, or something like that? Because there's no confirmation that Peanut didn't have rabies. Also, he had a stablemate, a housemate named Fred, a raccoon. Same thing. So they spent 5 hours trashing through this guy's house looking for, and of course the animals, they went and hid because they know something's up. If you have cats, how that works. So they found Peanut and Fred and took them and killed them. They euthanized them they killed them to find out if they had rabies. And of course, get a load of this, they didn't have rabies. That's because they're indoor squirrels and indoor raccoons. They did not go outside. So, but Strom's post about this on X is about the fact that it is the epitome of government overreach. So you had in 2020, you had, billions of dollars of damage done in like 20 U.S. cities, and 20 people died, and basically nobody was ever arrested. But this guy has a squirrel in his house, and they come and they ransack his home for 5 hours. And of course, because it's because of animal welfare, they didn't need a warrant. That's the other thing. It's like they did not need a warrant, and so and that's David's point. All sorts of there's thousands of migrants that come into America every week now that have been let in. Which is a travesty. I mean, it's an impeachable offense. The dereliction of duty regarding these migrants. I mean, in a sane world, Biden should have been impeached for this. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating here. I'm not even, yeah, you can talk about the fact that, okay, so his family made money off of his influence, all this sort of stuff. But this was a direct impeachable offense. And so, and all these thousands and thousands, millions of people that have come in illegally, and the government decides to spend their afternoon ransacking this guy's house looking for a squirrel. That's nuts. Not to mention the fact that it's his pet, and they made money off posting these adorable videos of this squirrel, and he was adorable. He was legitimately adorable for the organization. On top of all, but the thing is, it's like this is where your government is gone. This is where it's gone. They don't care about illegal migrants, and they don't care about rioters. But the pet squirrel must die. And David Strom's tweet has gotten millions of views. It's the first thing he's ever posted. He said that went viral. Truly went viral. First thing, and he's been doing this for quite a while. And so, yeah, and he's absolutely right. And so I don't know if you've seen the memes online over the weekend. They're all over the place about, elect Trump for peanut, because somebody's got to stop this. Our government. All right, here's another statistic you may not know. All these, unemployment's down. We have a really healthy employment thing until this last month when only 12,000 people were hired, which was like the lowest number in like 20 years or something. I can't remember exactly when it was, but yeah, it's just the employment numbers dropped through the floor. But this entire time that Biden's been president, 3.5 years, 1/4 of all the people who have found employment in the United States are working for the federal government. And it's been consistent pretty much every month. 1/4 of the people, they just keep hiring and hiring and hiring. Right now, there's over 4 million people in the United States, non-military. These are civilian people, non-military, who work for the federal government. The federal government employs 4 million people, which is just over, it's about 1.5% of the American population. Or if you're talking about the capable population, about 4%, right? Did I get that right? Or 2%? 2%, about 2% of 1 out of every 50 people in America who are adults works for the federal government. Why? Well, they can't seem to accomplish anything. I mean, Hurricane Helene was a disaster. They couldn't put anything together there. That was so much of a disaster. They were trying to stop people, regular civilians, regular ordinary citizens, from helping other people because it was making them look bad. It's like, this is terrible. And this thing, and Strom is right. This thing with peanut is like the perfect example of this. So if you're wondering why the current elitist state doesn't want Trump elected, because they don't want Elon Musk to come in and dismantle it. That's why. It's the same with the neocons and all these, Liz Cheney and all these people. They wanted to go back the way it was. In other words, everybody was on the take, and we were all very happy, right? And by the way, don't look. We're going to start another war, but don't look over there. I mean, have you ever stopped to think about this? This goes back 20, 30 years. That 2001, 9/11, buildings fall down. Osama bin Laden directs the whole thing from Afghanistan, and then the Bush administration decides that we're going to go after those people by going into Iraq. What? Huh? They're in Afghanistan. No, we're going to raid Iraq. We can stop this by raiding Iraq. No, you can't. And they didn't. I mean, it was just bullshit. It was completely utter bull crap. There's no other way to put it. So, at any rate, I think I'll leave it at that. Oh, I got one more thing here, and this is kind of related and maybe a little lighthearted, but more scary. And that is, there's people at Harvard, researchers at Harvard, that have come to the conclusion that, all right, so going full circle back to the top of the show, there's only 4 real pollsters who have been accurate the last 10 years. All the rest of them are full of crap. Now, in their defense, the ones that are full of crap, the problem is they're having a real hard time finding people to survey. So what is it? I thought that 20 years ago, 36% of the people who they contacted were willing to do a survey. Now it's down to 6%. And not only that, it's harder and harder to find these people because most people do not have landline telephones anymore. They won't pick up their cell phones. If someone's calling, they're having a harder and harder time doing it. Now that's in their defense. Okay. Like I said, Nate Silver says that the reason they're doing this is because basically to protect their bottom line. It's not partisan driven. They just think they're trying to protect their bottom line by calling the election close, because if they're right, it's great, and if they're wrong, they're not wrong by much. That's the thing. And he's calling them basically vaginas. That's what he's calling them. But Harvard, researchers at Harvard have figured out that they don't really need. This is kind of nuts. They don't really need to survey humans when they can just survey AI. Okay, all right. Now let me see. I don't think AI votes and AI doesn't vote, but the point is, and I did read this article, and it's like they have a point here. I'm a computer programmer, and I get where they're coming from. Where they're coming from is that, okay, so AI would end up consolidating a bunch of models of people being surveyed, and that you're not talking to real humans, and you might still be wrong, but you don't have how do I put this? You won't be any more wrong than if you talk to real people, and yet it's a lot cheaper. So in other words, you'd have the same amount of error, but man, it would cost us a hell of a lot less money. Okay, great. That's terrific. That's fantastic. Oh man. All right, folks. So we're taking tomorrow night off. Wednesday, Jeff Meyer will be here. We'll talk about what happened. Especially on the the coast of the United States, east and west coast, people are boarding their businesses up in downtowns across America because they expect Trump to win. And notice that everyone said we wouldn't be doing this if we thought Kamala was going to win, because although I do think, and a lot of people said this, there's going to be rioting no matter who wins. Even if Kamala wins this, there will be rioting, and it won't be from the right wing people. The left wing people will riot too. So they're going to riot either way. Yeah, so we'll find out where we're at on Wednesday. I actually think that Tyrus from the Gutfeld show, he's been talking about this for weeks, about the fact he thinks there's going to be a complete blowout, and we will know by 11 o'clock tomorrow night who the winner is. And I think he might be right, because like I said, this is a shell game among electoral accounts. The popular vote doesn't really seem to matter here much. I mean, I think there's a good possibility Trump will win this and lose the popular vote. That might happen. I don't think it'll happen. I still think he will win the popular vote, but I'm much less confident of that than I am the electoral count. So, and the thing is, it'll be pretty easy to figure that out. And then we'll see what the rioting is like on Wednesday. So Jeff and I will talk about it. We're taking Thursday off too. And then on Monday, Susie Moore from Red State is going to be here, and we'll talk to her about all this stuff too. And we should have a full slate of guests next week and moving forward. I'm kind of glad to get this over with. I mean, seriously, I've been doing this. We've been leading up to this now for 4 years, and so I really, on my personal feeling, I'll tell you, I voted for Trump, and I will be disappointed if Kamala wins, but there's this too, and that is the government. The public gets the government they want. They get the government they deserve. So it's like, yeah, you go, girl. So, I mean, I think I did not expect Biden's presidency to be as disastrous as it was. I didn't, but it was a disaster, and I predict that if she is reelected, she will be an absolute disaster because she's got personal problems. I'm talking about incompetence. I don't mean mental issues, although she might have some of those too. She's never demonstrated her competence. She's never been a hard worker. She's apparently a pain in the ass to get along with, and all this stuff I think was demonstrated on the campaign trail, but maybe people aren't paying that much attention. I don't know. So anyway, I want to thank you for listening. Yeah, we're done. My last solo show for a while. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie, and good night to you wherever you are. We'll see you on Wednesday night, everybody. Have a nice election night. Take care.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.